Hey folks, it's Sadesh, and I am back for another episode of Cloud Stream. Believe it or not, we're now on episode 11. And today we are really lucky. We've got someone who is kind of, I'll say, new to the organization relatively here at VMware, but has an interesting, I'd say, background and career path. And Victoria, will you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yes, thanks so much, Sudesh. Super happy to be here. My name is Victoria Wright. I am a product marketing associate here at VMware on the multi-cloud solutions team. I'm pretty early on in my career, actually. I just graduated back in May, and I'm doing a rotation program here at VMware. So essentially, I'm doing a 6-month stint here on the multi-cloud solutions team, and then I'll be doing another 6-month stint. And then after that year period, I decide what I want to do next. So super excited to be here.
Nice. And one thing that this show has been talking a lot about is careers, career paths, and career growth. And I think what would be helpful for our audience to kind of understand a little bit is, what was your educational background? Did you have any exposure to tech before? Just kind of lay out the groundwork. Like where did your zest for marketing and infrastructure solutions start? And tell us a
Came
little
all naturally.
bit.
Yeah. So my exposure to tech actually started pretty young. So
Okay.
back when I was in high school, I did this program called Career Pathways.
Uh-huh.
And essentially it was a tech-sponsored program where kids from underserved high schools got the experience of, taking business classes and then going to Cisco on site and doing projects and so on. And ultimately, at the end of the program, there is an internship opportunity. It was sponsored by Sam Liccardo, the mayor of San Jose,
Okay.
where essentially companies have access to interns for free, again, sponsored by the city of San Jose, to expose them to that experience of tech and work and so on. So back in my senior year of high school, right when I graduated, actually, I had the opportunity to work at an awesome startup called Scoop, the carpooling
Yeah.
startup. And I worked there for 2.5 years, right? And I got all that experience. I figured out what it's like. I was commuting to San Francisco from San Jose, which is just
Okay.
a few hours door to door. So
Right.
really building that corporate confidence.
Okay.
And then after that, I worked at a wealth management firm called UBS,
Yeah.
doing marketing for them.
Uh-huh.
And I should mention this is while I was in school as well. So I had the opportunity to work simultaneously while in school, and that really built that muscle of working and getting used to what that's like.
Balance.
And then back in 2020, I had the privilege of interning at VMware.
Nice.
So I
Yeah.
worked on the America's Customer Programs team. Absolutely loved it. And then after the 3 months there, I went over to NVIDIA, which I
Okay.
also loved so much. I worked on the AI and data center marketing teams, both product marketing and campaign.
Wow.
Did that for about 6 months, and then finally took a break from working. I took my whole last semester of college off. So I'm
Nice.
back and ready and rejuvenated and just really loving it so far here at VMware.
So just to be clear, like when you started in high school, there was a career program, and that's really what got you started in terms of kind of what areas of interest might be for you. Now, you just happen to be in I will say, the Bay Area, which is, I'm here in Atlanta. So if you need some Coca-Cola or a flight up from Delta, those are great comments. And Atlanta's got a great tech scene as well. Not to get down on Atlanta, but so those companies were close by, or did you naturally just kind of have an affinity towards tech based on the internships? What was
I
your
would say it's a combination.
Okay.
There's a ton of pressure also being in the Bay Area to be in the tech space.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you aren't in the tech space, you won't be able to survive here,
Mhm.
literally, like financially.
Well,
It's
I mean,
impossible.
that's what you're known for, right? Like that's the
Exactly.
worldwide rep, right? So yeah.
Exactly. So, I think there's that pressure just to
Mhm.
begin with, but in addition, tech was so exciting to me. Just the sheer amount of impact that you could have, getting access to the executives when I was in high school and seeing, Chuck Robbins, the CEO of Cisco, and seeing
Right.
him spend time with us for an hour and do a keynote. I was just absolutely enamored by
Yeah.
tech and how they were willing to give back to us, right? Like
Yeah.
a group of 60 high school kids.
Yeah.
So it was just that like initial exposure was so exciting for me, and that excitement is still there to this day.
Nice. I very empathetic for internships, cooperative education, career like technical training. I got the same start senior year of high school. I had an opportunity at Scientific Atlanta, and that's now kind of part of Cisco. So really, I was kind of starting there, and got exposure to things like SharePoint. Early on, still the bane of my existence, folks. And then other areas of the business like SAP, and you start to really learn about, well, what does it take to run these larger organizations and the complexities that you face when you're running at scale. The other thing too, one thing that is hard for folks to understand is like there's a whole vernacular that you have to use when you're on work calls, et cetera, just talking to your friends, et cetera. The vernacular, and that makes it much more helpful when you're in the workplace. You're not. I'd say here at VMware we actually have an acronym directory as well. So that tells you a little bit about that. So I think my next question for you is, what are you currently focused on? I know I have a little bit of background knowledge here, but I think tell folks what you're kind of focused on and what you're doing for.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I'm on week 6 here at VMware. Already got lots of stuff that I'm working on, primarily working on a competitive research project. So
Okay.
looking at some of the hyperscalers, which are our competitors, yet partners,
Yeah.
and understanding their messaging, right?
Yeah.
How are they positioning themselves? How can we take from that areas of development, right? Where can we grow? So I had the opportunity to present that to our team. It was well received. So tons of work there in terms of implementing changes, right? How can we reevaluate our technique in terms of our website? Is our messaging resonating with folks and so on? Secondarily, I have a derivative content project. So pretty product marketing focused here, taking our long form content like our white papers, our ebooks, and so on, and figuring out how can we repurpose it, right? Especially the content that is already really well performing. How can we turn that into a guide that is 2 pages or a social media post, right?
Yeah.
So trying to optimize the work that we've already done and make it even more effective.
Yeah.
Third, doing some original writing. So for the VMware blog, doing some of that. And then lastly, I don't know if I got to mention this to you, I will be doing some VMworld hosting.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
actually recording that today. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm working with Dan Flaherty to host the VMware multi-cloud track. So if you haven't already, register for VMworld, completely
Yeah.
free. You'll get to check us out on the multi-cloud track.
Well, that's really great. And now, would you say that your prior experience prepared you for some of the stuff that you're doing now? What is your kind of thought on that? Like what have you done before, or what is new in kind of what you're doing?
100% yes.
Yeah.
Not that I've done an exact one-to-one role that
Yeah.
is just like this, of course, but just in terms of understanding what it means to own a project. What are the steps necessary? What are the goals? What are the questions that I anticipate people are going to ask? And I
Mhm.
have that experience from previous roles, right?
Yeah.
So it has helped me tremendously. And also, being ready for feedback, being excited about feedback. How can I improve? And I think that's something that I had to build up a little bit over
Yeah.
the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal though to have that experience, and I feel extremely privileged to have had access to those safe spaces, if you will,
Yeah.
right? To know that I could totally mess up and it doesn't really matter, and that's the case now as well.
Yeah.
But of course, I am trying my best to always do the best possible. So
Okay.
it's been great so far.
So I think one of the things that I wanted to double click a little bit on was you did a really great piece of research. And what you did in this research was you did an analysis of how other organizations are presenting, I would call them concepts around cloud, right? Um, and then you compared and contrasted these concepts around cloud. And I think some of the great takeaways from that piece of research, and this might become more research or more thinking, right, is you notice that there were some common patterns, but a lot of times there wasn't a like a specific way that a customer could consume the content in a manner that's executable. And like, one example I kind of put out there is like, let's just say you're someone new to Kubernetes and you want to go run Kubernetes and you're like, oh, I'll just do this on the cloud. You know, is it 55 steps to do that? Like, how hard is it, right? There's a lot of marketing Kubernetes out there, but like, how do I actually go do it? And can I actually figure out how to do it in a timely manner, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the stakeholders that want to be able to like take on that task or that ask. What was your takeaway from doing that work?
My takeaway is, how can we simplify everything as much as possible?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure to do a lot,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's not as effective as we think, right?
Mhm.
How can we simplify? So another point that I made is, what is some quantifiable impact? People don't need a 20-page ebook sometimes, or white paper
Right.
explaining step by step or whatever. They just want to know the basics sometimes. Again, totally depends on your audience.
Yeah.
But for our really broad solution pages, right? How can we just say, here's what you're going to get from our products? You save
Yeah.
X amount, you save X amount of time, spend such stuff like that. So I would just say simplify, just understand the goals again, come back to center,
Mhm.
and think, how can we remove like at least 20% of what we've written because it's not necessary.
Right. No, I think it's a
That's
great
my
point because, this morning I was playing around on cloud provider's website trying to figure out how to do something, and what I realized was that there was no clear path to this thing. Right. Like I was like, oh, you don't necessarily do this thing, and um, you offer a suite of services, but not a single service. Right. So it was interesting for me to kind of come to that realization. Um, Now, one other area that I wanted to kind of talk about was, as you were kind of going through your internships, were there key things that you would share with others that kind of helped you through these things? Like, did you create a network with others? Did you have like mentors? How did you successfully navigate these different organizations as you were working through them?
Yes, fantastic question. I would say there's two things. One, be a sponge, absorb everything possible.
Hmm.
How are people talking? What words do they use? How do they
Yeah.
communicate, right? What is their work style like? Stuff like that is completely unspoken, but you can replicate, makes you integrate so seamlessly.
Into
People are
the
going to be like,
teams.
"Oh, wait, you're a new college grad or you're an intern? I couldn't tell," right?
Yeah.
Because you walk the walk. You just
Yeah.
look like you're part of the organization. And
Hmm.
I don't think people really mention that much. How are people dressing?
Yeah.
Even so
Cultural
simple as
fit.
that, right? Because I mean, when you're coming from college, you have like zero exposure, to be honest, of what it's actually like to be in the workplace. So
Yeah.
that's why I think internships are really special. Now,
Uh-huh.
second is network. Oh my gosh, network. Seriously, during my VMware internship, I had like 70 one-on-ones.
Hmm.
And just get comfortable. Just get comfortable talking about yourself, asking people questions. And I always come back to this. People love talking about themselves. I used to get really nervous before one-on-ones, but then I realized like people are enjoying this. They love to talk about their experience. They love to share.
Yeah.
So yeah, do those two things and you will be set. The work will take care of itself.
Mm.
Obviously, work as hard as possible, but you have to do those two things to really stand out.
No, I like that because essentially the first one is understand the culture you're working in. And even with remote work, I think you have to understand, when are people on Slack? When are people on Teams? If you get an email, how do you prioritize like that email if it's after hours? Those types of norms relative to the organization. And then I think that the other thing I heard you say was the idea of networking. And I think there's, the thing that's hard when you're young and you start your career is understanding what investment in networking really pays off long term. And the way I think about that is that if you start off and you start kind of building your network and you're talking to folks, later on, those folks are going to go to their next job, right? And it's almost like you should be asking yourself, hey, what's the next job for this particular person, right? Where are they going next? How are they going to grow? And understanding that, because relatively, as you're young in your career, and you are growing to different positions, that's really where a lot of that networking pays off. You can finally call that person over at, NVIDIA and say, hey, listen, I don't really get the AI strategy that this person, that they're pursuing. Can you help me understand, maybe a little bit more around what that strategy might be? And also, what we know about tech is that at some point, everybody runs into everybody, right? Like
Yes.
it's a big small world. So
Yeah, one thing I should have mentioned is that's how I got this role is through networking.
yeah,
Um, Like, entirely. So, basically, it's a long story, but I'll consolidate it. For my intern project, I had to really quickly switch gears and change into another project.
uh-huh,
Um, and I was able to do that with the help of someone named Jay. She connected me to AJ Herrera,
uh-huh,
VP of brand here at VMware.
yeah,
I was able to present that project, and Sam DeBow, my current manager, saw that and was interested in reaching out for a full-time role. And at that point, I wasn't even considering returning
yeah,
back to VMware, but because of that network I had developed, I was able to get the offer that I wanted with the team that I wanted, with the manager that I wanted,
yeah.
doing the stuff I wanted to do. So, I mean, it'll also help you get a job potentially.
No, I think a lot, as you think about career growth overall, a lot of that has to do with what the network is that you've kind of built out and how you're reaching out to folks and how you're presenting yourself, right? Overall, that is part of a growth strategy when it comes to career. Now,
Definitely.
uh, one thing that I think a lot of people are intimidated about in tech is not being, I'll say it, like an administrator of things or a developer of things or deeply, deeply ingrained in the technology that your organization may be kind of purveying. I'm curious, what advice would you have to folks who are they're a little bit reticent or they don't want to start off with like, hey, I don't know the Java stack. I don't know the Kubernetes engines, whatever it is that they're feeling intimidated about. And I'm sure that's an experience that everyone has. It's like, hey, I don't know everything yet, but I'm going to try. But what is your kind of guidance there?
Yeah, I was talking to Emily on our team about this yesterday, actually, and she made a transition into tech later on in her career. And something that she said really stuck out to me, where essentially companies already have a ton of engineers. They
Hmm.
already have so much technical stuff. And we also have to understand what our role is. Our role isn't to be doing the developing or be
Yeah.
super technical, it's to synthesize that and market it.
Yep.
Right, so having a general understanding, of course, is essential, but for me, that's something I was able to do on the job. For my first week here at VMware, I was heads down on all the solutions training. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I did so much in 5 days. And for me, it was totally sufficient. And something else to keep in mind is the market is changing so much. I mean, look at how many people are transitioning from like a liberal arts background into engineering and so on
Yeah.
and back and forth. And I think it's incredible, and they do really well in their roles because they bring a different skill set, and I think that is actually a strength that we should be confident in.
Nice. I think that's another good perspective for folks that may, be intimidated by the fact that, hey, this is advanced technology stuff and I don't know how it works. Well, you know, you fly in a plane and you don't know how a plane works. So uh, that that's a really good. For our last few minutes here, I ask each of my guests, when you're not focused on work, what do you do for fun to relax, and what are you passionate about outside of being a great marketer?
Yeah, this is a really important part of my life. Um, Being able to disentangle my identity from work, that's something I've been working on the last couple of months here. But a rule that I have for myself is every single day I get outside of these four walls. If
Yeah.
that's for a walk, if I'm going to the gym, I just joined a rec soccer league a
Yeah.
couple of months ago, right? Just having a life outside, have something to look forward to
Right.
has been huge. And I feel like the weeks just fly by more compared to during the pandemic when I'm working from home. I'm in this room every day. I'm working here, I'm
Yeah.
eating here, I'm eating here. It's really dangerous to do that actually because
Uh-huh.
it's a formula for burnout. So that's something I highly recommend, starting to get more into reading. That's been really exciting. So just
Yeah.
doing a ton of stuff that I never used to do, and it's been really fun.
Good. Well, Victoria, I am looking forward to the next time we chat because I want an update on where you go with this competitive research. And, also, I'm sure there's some other topics that will come up between now and then. And, I feel it's always helpful to have these conversations about career, where you're starting from, where you may go. And just wanted to thank you for your time today.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me again. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing.